You're listening to Data Center Therapy. Please take a number, and an engineer will be right with you. Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Data Center Therapy. I'm your host, Matt Yette, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Matt Cozzolino. Matty, how are you?
I'm great this morning. How are you doing?
Great, thank you. We are joined by someone who's no stranger to the pod. Been on here a handful of times in the 80-some-odd episodes that we've done here, but it's always good to have him on. Welcome, Mr. Ryan Grelck. Ryan, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going great. Thanks for having me on again. Been a while, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 2 months, it could be a couple of years, and I don't think I'd be able to tell the difference really at this stage. So you just tell me the last time you were on, and I believe you.
Just keeps rolling, keeps going.
Yeah, well, we're now in, we're about halfway through the year now. So we're coming on the summertime. The dog days of summer are upon us, and we decided to focus in a little bit on some of the latest stuff we're doing educational-wise. And we've been obviously reinvesting in our classrooms and training classes. And both gentlemen I have on with me today are very intimately familiar with that. But today we plan to talk about Horizon, and kind of one of those technologies that's been around for, certainly a long time, a lot of options out there, but progress continues unabated. And Ryan has updated our classes to the latest version. And what is the latest version right now anyway? 8 something? Or they call it by
8.9 or 2302, I think.
Have we changed it? Okay, so it's yearly and monthly then.
They do both, but yeah.
Yeah. So Ryan, what's what are you seeing out there with regards to virtual desktops? Is that an archaic term? Am I legacy by saying virtual desktops at this point? VDI?
No, it's still a good term. It's still in use everywhere. It's not just virtual desktops. You don't just deliver, a full virtual desktop. You can deliver just applications if you wanted to, using, app volumes and Horizon's app license version that lets you just publish apps, like any other application, like through an RDSH server, or through Citrix. Just similar ways to do that. You just publish an application and it just goes straight to the end user.
When I'm consuming that, how's that look? Do I see the Horizon wrapper around it still, like when I launched that full desktop, or do I see just the app as like its own thing? It looks like it's installed.
It looks like it's more native, so
okay.
You could resize the window and all of that stuff. Obviously, if you're using a Mac client and then you're connecting to obviously either Windows or Linux desktop, you're gonna have that Windows UI. You can't get around that, obviously, but.
Okay.
Or if you're going through the web page, it doesn't really break it out into its own window. It just stays within that browser.
What kind of apps do you see most people like using? What fits well into that app volume or app
EMR applications, like Epic, stuff like
okay.
that is always great. Any other homebrew applications? I've done a few of those. Lots of more enterprisey type applications that people end up using.
Okay, so not necessarily. I guess the follow up then is, do you see more people doing like full on desktops, or is it here's your specific app? Like what's the most consumed piece there?
Definitely desktops are still king, but you still do deploy a bunch of the published applications. It's just a different license level also.
Okay.
So not everybody has the enterprise or the apps license version. So
okay.
I remember one of the from a VM world, like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, VMware came out with the I think it was it called Project Fusion? I know they have, the hypervisor client is Fusion, but they had a project that was like it was supposed to be a BYOD thing where you could turn on a feature or open an app, and it's essentially now your work version of your phone. and
Yeah.
the idea of virtualizing on your phone was supposed to be a thing. I almost feel like maybe that would have hit or would have been pushed forward, but at the same time, then zero trust and security kind of like slammed the brakes.
It did, yeah. It
I'm
really
like,
did.
whoa, wait a minute here.
That would have been such
yeah.
a cool technology. I
It
tried
seemed
it
that
out.
way.
It was neat. But then
Yeah.
another thing is, Android kind of built that separation of work and personal apps out also, so that you can just
So you
have
those
your
two
own
different
work
logins.
environment versus
Mhm.
your personal environment. So
Is there such thing as a secure Android device, though? And I'm saying
Oh,
that
yeah.
tongue-in-cheek, but I mean it, too.
oh yeah, I mean you have the Samsungs and the Pixels are. I mean, Samsung has the Knox, which is secure enclave type thing that Apple has on all of their devices, stuff like that.
I think
So-
the flagship phones are all up
The
there. in what they can
flagships
do.
are good.
Yeah.
Not the Android phones that are running an OS that's 5 years old that you can still pick up at the
Like all
phone
of them.
shop. Yeah.
The
I don't
7-Eleven
know.
prepaid Android.
But I thought the very nature of Android that everybody loves to champion is I can load my own APKs and do this and do that, and that sounds to me like great security. You are on your own.
Well, you can do that on
No?
your Mac.
Yeah, I mean you could do that
Yeah.
on Mac, on iOS, easy.
But does that mean security-wise, in terms of you can't do that on iOS easily, Ryan? You cannot.
Does that make it more
Sideload?
secure though? That's the argument.
Oh, I
Does.
don't think
Right.
that's much of a debate. I mean, yeah. The 0-day stuff for all the phones, including iOS, like the have you read it into some of the non-interactive, zero interaction vulnerabilities that existed? I think I might have talked about it on one of the podcasts, but it basically was in a library that the Messages app, and this is specifically iOS, the way they attacked it, but the Messages app, obviously to display content, it's not just text or whatever, the attachments, images, etc. Everything needs to be received and said, okay, what is this? How am I going to display it to the user? And there's like this legacy application, legacy format of image that hasn't been used since like 1978. But the library to display like the modern version of the images carries forward that like it can still open it if you need to, kind of thing. And these hackers discovered a 0-day, like how to exploit and execute code, but it's buried like 5 interpretation layers down. Reading the article and how they actually attacked it and discovered it in the first place is just mind blowing. And that they were able to send a text message that the phone didn't appear to receive, right? You don't see it. It's happening in the background, and it just like opens up the entire thing. And that's pretty terrifying.
Oh
But,
yeah, absolutely. And it's all these nation state, which we're not going to be targets of, but if we work for government or something, you can very well be the target of one of these attackers.
Sheesh. So I mean, the isolated stuff is nice. So from a Horizon standpoint, Ryan, it's you're not going to probably pull up your desktop on your phone, which I know you can. I know there's docking and things like that,
Yep.
but chances are you're going to deliver applications that way. That's something that's pretty strong in the latest version.
Yeah, I mean, it works. It's always worked really well on the phones, to be honest. Either through the client, or you could even pull up your own web browser on your phone and connect into VDI, and it's actually the performance is pretty awesome.
I think the
that's
one I
nice.
You
You can-
most about that is tablet devices, phone devices, touch interface devices. Is a whole different UI. I've ended up using some apps. Yeah, right. So I've ended up using some apps that were like driven when they were designed to be on a tablet and touched.
Yep.
And I want to fill in these fields with a keyboard and hit tab, and it just doesn't work for that. Obviously, design was aimed at a tablet or a phone type
Well,
of.
it's kind of like, remember, Bill Gates' big thing was Windows on tablets back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and the OSs. And it's weird. It's
Those
weird
drop-downs
because
just don't work like that.
Well, no, and I think Mac OS is going through a similar struggle. Not necessarily the interface, but the whole UI melding. They made the iPhone. It was based on Mac OS, the core Darwin, but they resisted the urge to try to make it pointy clicky kind of thing. And there was this new paradigm born of dragging and multi-touch and all of this. But now we're seeing at least the UI elements get pulled back into Mac OS, and it's killing me. because I don't want this screen to look like an iPad. I don't need it to. And it's all generational, right? I'm probably losing some 19-year-olds who maybe listen to this podcast, but like full screen apps on a desktop computer,
no.
You absolute child. What are you doing? What are you doing? It's called a windowed operating system because you can layer things and move things around. Nope, full screen. Great.
Yeah. The other thing though about that is, Apple's super resistant to putting in touch screens on their actual laptops and stuff, where it could.
It would make a difference if
but
you had that.
It would obviously cut into their very large. They sell a lot of iPads. They don't want to cut into that.
That's weird, right? I mean, I see where that point of view comes from, but I think it's more about the usability case, though, too. Do you want to Gorilla Arm it? The whole thing, from your keyboard to your screen?
So when I use my, I just recently, last year got a Surface, and when I'm using that, I will fairly often do the thumb tappy, scrolling around, navigating things. So if it's there and I can use it easier sitting on the couch than the mouse, sure.
I am wildly comfortable with a mouse. It's really strange, like to the point where a laptop is frustrating for me because even though Apple makes the greatest trackpads out there, quality-wise, they drive me bananas.
Oh, they just don't compare. Yeah.
I like even the touch. A lot of people get like an iMac with a Magic Touchpad or whatever they call it, right? And they use that. No, if I'm going to be sitting here, I grab this, I can drag it across my lap here, my desk, whatever, and it's yeah.
Mice are superior by far.
Mice are superior.
Yeah, and I think and it's probably good we don't have any trackball users on this episode because there might be fisticuffs right now. Because I think I've talked to a few of those and they do not pull punches like.
I'd use a little nub. I've used those before. Those are
the nub or the trackball.
Oh, the big ones, not like
trackball,
or ones with the thumb.
Never mind. No.
There are people who are hardcore and they will. You can pry them out of their cold dead hands, kind of thing.
I've seen people game with those, and I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I think if you get comfortable with that, I think the level of precision and control, because you don't have to move your hand at that point. It's static, and your thumb just, of course. Then they show up to order food, and their thumb's 3 times the size of everything else. It's funny how we've gotten from a virtual desktop into experience with desktops, because
it's what it's all about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's end user.
It's funny you say Epic. I'm not obviously a healthcare professional, but that's not, or is it, Ryan? Are those the things that you can actually view, like wrist packs imaging and through? Does they do that through Epic?
Generally, they're not going to do imaging through Epic because the displays just aren't high resolution enough.
Right.
There was years ago when I was actually working for the hospital, I recall putting in like 500,000 but 500,000 shade black and white monitors for the imaging department so that they could have that much contrast in all of the images. I always saw the imaging being a different.
Those are not cheap. Those are not cheap.
No, they weren't.
Yeah, and technically, it's possible with Horizon. Horizon offers a thing called build to lossless, where it displays your image and then automatically fills in all the missing stuff because it's compressed, right? So it's not a full image. So it'll eventually get to
like object storage,
a full image, so that they could see whatever would be going on, but it's just not a good use case. Just because they can't wait for that. There could be
they're flipping through layers,
an anomaly. Yeah.
And you have to have the that whole end user experience, right? I'm not going to be able to see all of those levels of gray on my phone or my laptop.
Yep, exactly.
I need to have a monitor that can drive that.
Those calibrated monitors are so important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Crazy stuff. I used to work in a hospital, and we were doing a wrist packs project at the time, and it's just the modalities that hook up to it and those monitors, the resolution. You're like, what do you mean? You can do 4K, and I mean at that point, 4K really wasn't a thing, but not the consumer world. But it's pretty amazing. I remember them telling the story like, oh, doctors will be able to log in remotely, and do all these kinds of things.
Which you kind of have
impressive.
now. Like a lot of smaller hospitals and whatnot will do the imaging and then send it to like an outsourced radiology department to get read.
Well, why not? Right?
Yeah. You just, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
We
your
had the
job
point-to-point radios between sites. That was mind-blowing because at the time it was like 2004, and we were doing gig links over line of sight, like 60 gigahertz radios, and that was super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
World keeps marching forward, man.
Wow.
It does. So Ryan, what am I learning in this? What am I learning in this class here?
So I keep it up to date with the latest and greatest versions of Horizon. So everything's deployed with the Horizon 8.9. No external access, right? Because that's kind of difficult to provide in a lab. But we do. Everyone has their own Horizon environment specific to your own student. So everybody has their own domain controller, their own vCenter, their own connection server, their own app volume server. So they have the full stack that they can use then to learn how to use Horizon as an administrator. One thing that's really cool is I have the latest version of app volumes, which I'm not really set up for it in the lab, but new thing that's available in with app volumes is a new technology called apps on demand that essentially decouples the OS and the application updates from itself, so that you could then provide a rolling updates for your users for your applications. So if you have an application that needs to be updated often, you could just deploy updates whenever needed, and you don't need to take down your pools or your RDSH farms to do that. You could just publish as needed. So it really is on demand, and it's really great because you could do a stack per application and keep them all separated, or you could do the traditional keep multiple applications in an app stack and deploy that. So
how does Horizon consume the desktop user space to be able to present just the application? Does it still create a login and run the app inside of a login, or like how does it do that?
Well, you could either apply those applications to an actual desktop that the user's going to log into. So maybe you want to deliver an application that's maybe licensed different than everybody else. So you just publish that licensed application through app volumes. So you can either do that on the desktop, or you could create what's called an RDSH farm in Horizon terminology, which is a group of RDSH servers that would then present your application. You just it would mount that application on one of the RDSH servers and then present just that application to that end user.
That mounting process, is there like a generic VDI user that launches these, or does it take my credentials, pass it to this remote desktop
It would take your
server?
credentials, see what you're entitled to. So say you're entitled to an Epic application, or some other licensed application, Adobe Acrobat. That VMDK, or the application is actually just a VMDK. The application is set up with like Active Directory permissions. So when it evaluates, if you're a member of this group, assign this application, and then the agent then mounts the VMDK automatically on either the desktop or that farm for that user, so that the applications can then be used by the user.
Okay. And if I were to look at that farm, it would show me myself logged into that server.
Yeah,
as
you have a
user
session,
login.
not necessarily.
Do
You may not have like a full desktop on
Right.
that farm.
Okay. That was going to be my next question. Is like if I went from I'm getting this just single app delivered to me to I went and logged into this environment, do I then see my app as if it was, always there, always running, kind of a thing? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I didn't realize it did.
Yeah, it's
that
pretty
far.
neat. Yeah.
So Ryan, how long is this? A 5-day class?
It's a 4-day class, and then we generally have a half day on the 5th day or the last day of our class. That's
For office
open
hours.
office hours, open for anybody for any questions, or if they're, if they were behind, if they have any questions on some specific lab, because I have, I think, 22 labs to go over in my class.
Lots of
I
opportunity
think
to go
that's
through.
a ton of value. I mean, you think about getting dedicated time with one of our consultants, and it's not typically free, and all of these. When you think about the value of what you get on the class, and then basically, and I remember this from when we had classes in person way back in yesteryear, but it was always neat that you could be at your workstation and Ryan be walking around, and hey Ryan, a lot of times, let's take the vSphere class for example, Kaz. Somebody might be VPN'd into their environment, and they'd have questions. They'd say, hey, what do you think about this? Or this topic we're going over, how does this apply to what I've got going?
You see
And
what
the
it does
answers are
in the
there. We
lab
talk
and
about
then
it.
compare it to
Yeah.
my actual environment. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember before I was an IVOXY employee, I was an IVOXY customer, and I asked about the classes, and I said, hey, does this get me my VCP, this VMware class? And at first I was so disappointed because the answer was no. But then, they explained it to me, and I've since learned that, personally, is I find that our classes are so much more valuable than the the class to the test, like the official be, because those certainly you're supposed to learn for certification tests, but oftentimes it's very much like I just need to get over the hump and get this cert for whatever thing is asking me to get this cert, and it's not always the best way to learn day-to-day administration and knowledge and hands-on techniques. It's more like, hey, how do I check this box? Whereas our educational classes are just the opposite. You don't get a cert for it, but you get that hands-on expertise and, hey, what do I really need to know to make my job better and take advantage of this tool that we just invested dollars in, and get face-to-face and hands-on communication with the experts in the technology as well. And what's cool, Kaz, is how many vSphere environments have you seen?
All of them, right? That's exactly what I was going to say. Is that's the thing that doesn't necessarily get talked about. Here's this class, learn about this topic, learn about this whatever. But if it's just me or Ryan going through the slides, going through the lecture component of it, there's not that 5 days worth of time, right? We need 5 days to go through it because we're going to stop and talk about, hey, you've got this in your environment. We talked about this topic and how to configure iSCSI. Oh, you're doing it differently? Let's take a look at that. Let's talk about some of the pros and cons of the way you're doing it in your environment. Right, that kind of
it's a lab environment, so if we really needed to, we could re-provision a student desktop. So
let's
if
try
you need
that.
Yeah, let's try that. If it breaks, we'll just get you a brand new one. It's no big deal.
And I won't speak for Ryan here, but I mean, I would assume that it's meant to be collaborative and bidirectional in terms of, it would get very boring if it was just Ryan or anybody just sitting up there just spitting at the screen, just lecturing.
So much better when everyone interacts. You got to talk up.
Yep.
Ask those questions before we get them answered, yeah.
And all of those questions really help the other students in the class also. I mean, it's very collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool. So the class is coming up here. It looks like July 10th through the 14th. So the week of the 10th. So it's the week after the 4th.
Yep. That's
good. So are you looking all right, Ryan? We still good on enrollment? We have space still?
Oh yeah. We have space filling up. So hopefully we could get full class. But yeah, it's gonna be great.
Awesome. It's good to know. So to register, is it a website? They just reach out to your account manager?
Yeah, reach out to the account manager. We have links on IVOXY.com also for the class information.
Cool.
Or if you want, feel free to reach out to any three of us on the podcast, and we'll get you in the right way.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Good call. Do you know who's helping you out, Ryan? We usually tandem it, right?
We usually do, yeah. Depending on availability, it might just be myself, or it may be, somebody else. Yeah.
What happens if the riffraff comes out? How do you do you have a bouncer? Do you just stand up for yourself there?
No, yeah. I mean, I've taught the class 5 times now, I think. So I'm pretty comfortable teaching
We've gone
it.
through it a couple of times, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting when we have, I want to say maybe about a dozen people, it actually makes a lot more sense to have extra help, because then you can have 2 or 3 people working on 2 or 3 things.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. Gents, it's good to squeeze one in here. I know we're extraordinarily busy here, but it's always good to be able to set some time aside and chat with y'all. We are definitely eager to chat about whatever you all want to hear. So if somebody has a topic that you want us to kind of banter about or talk, or if you want to be a guest, we might be able to work something out there. So, podcast at ivoxy.com is the way to reach us there. But yeah, we're coming into the summer full steam ahead. We've got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. We have launched a new co-managed service called IVOXY at Your Service. And that continues to evolve and shape. And it's obviously not one size fits all, but it definitely is designed to make sure that you are in control of your environment, full visibility, but with assistance, right? The crutch, accessing our entire team of consultants on Slack as a part of that, monitoring security vulnerabilities for the applications and hardware you have running on your environment, things of that nature. If you want to chat more about that, reach out to Ryan, Matt, or myself. We're happy to talk you through why we think that's a really great idea and helpful. And really, it's a matter of everybody out there has their projects that they're tackling and the fun stuff, right? The good, the progress, moving forward. But the dock is old. But I'm not going to drop this and go back and update this. I got to update. How many customers I've talked to that are still on vSphere 6.7, which is a no-no, right? But we all get it. I understand why that is.
Or older.
I understand why that is. We can help with that. So, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to chat with you about that.
Yep.
But Ryan, thanks for joining us, man. Good to chat with you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Maddie, and good to see you as well.
Yeah,
and your smiley microphone pad. Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening to Data Center Therapy. Y'all have a great day.